Hi, today we're going to talk about drugs that affect our nervous system, specifically caffeine and alcohol. If you've already watched the nervous system video, you'll know that there's two states that we kind of want to move through quickly, not necessarily avoid entirely, but they're dysregulated states of the nervous system. One is what we call sympathetic nervous system overdrive. That's when we're in extreme fight or flight. The other one is dorsal vagal collapse. That's when we're kind of frozen, unable to move, unable to kind of move through our day and do what we need to do, what we desire to do, activate our passions, all that. So the two drugs that I'm talking about are alcohol and caffeine. So let's first talk about alcohol briefly. Often people are wondering, kind of in this binary space of like, am I an alcoholic or can I just, drink, unfettered? I don't have to evaluate my relationship with alcohol at all. And the reality is that the binary is not that firm. There's this whole area that we call gray area drinking, that's in between that, where someone is simply having a relationship with alcohol that doesn't serve them. And honestly, it makes total sense, because we don't like to admit this, but alcohol is an addictive substance, especially when it's applied to a traumatized brain. And it can create a feedback loop that is difficult without having someone be physically addicted to alcohol in such a way that they'll go through withdrawals if they stop drinking. I personally have experienced being stuck in that loop, using alcohol to moderate my nervous system, and it makes total sense. There's no shame about that. The reason why it makes sense is because when you are in a dysregulated nervous system state, you have more of a tendency to access something that you believe will kind of move you out of that space. And it does temporarily. When you're in a sympathetic nervous system overdrive state and you do have a drink, alcohol is a depressant, and it will temporarily move you into a state. Unfortunately, that space is only when your blood alcohol is rising. When your blood alcohol stops rising and your body starts clearing that out of your system, your nervous system wants to bring you to homeostasis. And so it starts to dump cortisol and adrenaline in your system to counteract that depressant reaction. And that is why often when we drink, we wake up at 2 or 3 in the morning and our heart is pounding, because those stress hormones are being injected into our system, and the counteraction of those hormones actually produces higher anxiety. So you can see how creating a feedback loop of drinking in order to bring ourselves down is actually getting us to not into the opposite of where we want to go. How do we kind of break that feedback loop of drinking? Well, I will put some resources underneath that you can access that are very gentle, that are focused on self-compassion and not shame, that will support you in kind of interrupting and breaking your cycle with alcohol. You don't have to commit to never drinking again in order to do this work. There's a lot of support available online. I'm not going to reinvent the wheel here by recreating these support. But if you're in this cycle, just know that you're not alone. There's a lot of people, especially since the coronavirus pandemic and all the alcohol memes and all of the encouragement that we had to use alcohol in this way. It's definitely putting people in a trapped state right now, and there are a lot of people who are desperate to interrupt their relationship with alcohol. So if you're one of them, you came to the right place. The second drug is caffeine, and I'm not going to say that not to use caffeine. I myself have a cup of coffee in the morning some days. I do try to take regular breaks from caffeine and get it out of my system. But caffeine puts us into a sympathetic nervous system state, and if our sympathetic nervous system is already activated, it can activate us more. Caffeine is a very powerful stimulant, and so the fact that it's in our gum, it's in our seltzer water, it's in everything now, especially this pharmaceutical grade caffeine that's in Excedrin. It's somewhat risky. The threshold for overdosing on caffeine is not really that high, and it has a 6-hour half-life, which means that if you drink a cup of coffee, 6 hours later, half of the caffeine from that cup of coffee is still in your system. So for people who drink caffeine all day, they're actually accumulating caffeine in their system that they're never clearing out. I know for myself, I went through a period of time where I had some adrenal failure going on. I had maxed out my adrenals through a lot of lifestyle things, too much stress, too much caffeine. And I was drinking caffeine pretty much all day long. And when I did have to stop caffeine for a season to refresh my adrenals, I went through the worst withdrawals of any drug I have ever had. I was sick for several days to 1 week. I actually had to take time off work to recover from my caffeine addiction. So I just want you to just be mindful of how much caffeine you use when you're taking it and how it's affecting your nervous system. Maybe consider taking a little break, taking a cleanse from caffeine, but I only am asking you to take breaks if you're able to take it in a gentle, self-compassionate way and not stress your nervous system again by applying shame or guilt or any of these things. These are very, very normal experiences to have to start regulating your nervous system with drugs. It's one of the reasons why we reach for drugs without even thinking about it, because those are our subconscious loops that we have that we really need to interrupt when we're doing this work intentionally. So I'm going to put some resources below. I'd love for you to reach out to me if you need extra support. And I hope you have a beautiful day.